Hello everyone, I'm Greg Weaver. Welcome to The Audio Analyst. On Monday, February 24th, the day after the Florida International Audio Expo and the day before I toured the VAC factory and had my chat with Kevin Hayes, I spent the day in Orlando at the residence of my friend and colleague, fellow writer Maurice Jeffries. And while it is always fun catching up with him, I was on a mission as well. Maurice was upgrading from his single platter Kronos 0.5 Sparta turntable to the full Sparta with its signature patented dual platter counter-rotating approach to combating distortions and masking with our favorite sources, the long play vinyl record. Such an endeavor was a bit beyond his capabilities and experience base, so it was my pleasure to assemble, set up, and install the Kronos Sparta turntable, including a Kronos Chronoscope resonance suppression tone arm, and the overachieving Hana Umami Red moving coil cartridge for him. Today we'll see what it took to uncrate, assemble, set up, and install this superb Kronos LP transcription system. Have a look at the living space that houses his remarkably synergistic and well-integrated system, and hear our Zoom conversation discussing that process and the resultant significant step forward its addition to his rig brought to the soundscape and musical tapestry it renders in this intimate space. Let's have a look. Welcome, everybody. You've met this cat before on the channel. This is my good friend, Maurice Jeffries. He's been here a couple of times. I've been there a couple of times. In fact, I think it was the last time I was at your place prior to this February was in January of 2023 when we set up your Chronoscope RS tone arm.
And destroyed a moving coil cartridge in the process. Yeah. I did.
Well, we can talk about that if you want. It's up to you. But the reason for today's discussion, and thanks for taking the time to join me,
my pleasure,
is that in February after the Florida International Audio Expo, you had come to the show. So I rode from the show to your home in Orlando, and on Monday the 24th, we replaced your 0.5 Sparta with a full Kronos Sparta contra-rotational device, and you have a Sparta supercapacitor power supply kind of on layaway. You're waiting for that to come too.
Yep. Bill and I just spoke earlier today actually about resolving that. So that should soon be in the system as well. Absolutely.
Excellent. Now we moved your Chronoscope RS tone arm from the 0.5 to your full Sparta.
Yep.
And we changed from the it was a Dynavector, what was it, the DV?
It was a Dynavector 20XL.
20XL.
So about, I think that those cartridges run today about $1,200.
Yeah, I think it was
not quite entry level, but on the lower end in the moving coil cartridge universe.
Perfectly respectable cartridge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But we moved to the Hana Umami Red, which I actually reviewed in episode 143 back in October of 2023.
And you loved it, as I recall.
I absolutely want. Well, dude, it's made next door, literally the same factory, the same people, probably on a bench right next door to where they make my fabulous Etsuro Gold. So I was quite taken with, and I think when I finished the review, I said that it was more like the Etsuro Gold than it wasn't. I mean, it's the same cantilever assembly. It's built by the same guys in the same factory. So it's fabulous. But now, if you would, we got the crate up to your audio room. We unpacked the Sparta. I put it together, and I'll be putting pictures together for people to see what that looked like. But do you want to talk about, from your perspective, how the setup and assembly went?
Well, you did most of the setup and assembly work. As you'll recall, I had a herniated disc from overdoing all the lifting and moving to get everything actually ready. So I was back and forth every half an hour with a hot pad and
You were
Tylenol,
miserable,
and
dude. It was terrible.
well, it was terrible. Fortunately, I recovered rather quickly, and I'm pretty much 100% back to my normal self. But minus a couple of glitches here and there, which always occurs when you're setting up a high-end turntable. Nothing ever goes perfectly. It was about as smooth a setup as I've seen. And you cursed only as much as you did helping to set up the Chronoscope RS tone arm, as you did setting up the full blown contra-rotational platter beast. And as your pictures and images will show our viewers, it's a beast. It's about what 75 pounds,
Yeah, I think, yeah.
all in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really elegant looking. I actually like the aesthetics, but
Yeah, it's
it
gorgeous.
it is it's like living in the same neighborhood as the zero point 0.5, but moving into almost the best house in the neighborhood, with the understanding that you've got the Pro, now the Perpetual, and the Discovery above it. But they are all on the same continuum, and that contra-rotational platter addition makes all the difference in terms of pitch stability and coherence and dynamic expressiveness. Not to mention that the new cartridge, which is a much more refined moving coil, just captures the shimmer and density of strings and woodwinds on a level that the Dynavector is as fine a cartridge as it was, just can't match.
Yeah,
Um,
not in the same strata at all. Now, I got my Sparta in the summer of 2015 and reviewed it for the Absolute Sound, and
has
I
it been
said a
that
number of
long?
things.
Man,
Yeah, I said a number of things. One of them was that I felt that contra-rotation, that principle, as to me, as startlingly obvious as it seemed, it shocked me that nobody had really done that before. I mean, 47 Lab had built one, but it wasn't suspended. It was tiny. It was minuscule. It was no mass. It was not very impressive. I actually didn't remember it that well. It was not that big a deal. But I had mine from 2015 till 2021 when I replaced it with the Pro. And when you were here, we had many discussions about it. And I think, correct me if you disagree with this or add anything you want to. What
sure.
I have always said about these particular devices, from the full Kronos Sparta all the way up to the through the Perpetual now and up to the Discovery, contra-rotation delivers on a number of ways that I don't think I've ever heard from any other turntable. In particular, microdynamic resolution, the ability to scale and shade and nuance things down near the noise floor at very quiet passages, and the absolute vitality and vibrance of mid-range. There's an absolute life and vibrancy to mid-range that I don't hear with other tables, and I think it's because of the fact that the contra-rotation allows for certain kinds of unmasking that we don't get with even the best of other turntables. What do you think?
Agree 100%. Well, like you, I've heard all the Kronos turntables now. I heard the original limited edition Pro back at Expona in what 14, 15, I think. Is that about
Somewhere in
right?
there, yeah.
Yeah. And then I heard the Sparta, the full-blown Sparta in your system. I think the first time I heard the Sparta in your system, I'm not sure if you had the Discovery RS tone arm
No, I did not
on
yet.
the
No,
table there. So
no.
so you had was it the Black Beauty or the Helena at that
It
time?
was it was probably the Helena at that time.
Gotcha. And it was a
Probably.
magnificent sounding table.
Yeah.
I've heard your on at least one occasion your Kronos Pro. I've heard it with the Discovery tone arm
Yeah.
and the cartridge that costs as much as a nice car. I've heard the Perpetual at
We don't talk about that.
I've heard the Perpetual at Bill's. I've heard
Yeah.
the Discovery at Bill's, and I've heard the Discovery in Louie's living room.
Yeah.
And so I've got a pretty good sense of what the Discoveries, what the Kronos line does. And the big challenge that I'm confronting now is that colorations and distortions in the rest of my system that I didn't notice before with just the point 0.5. Even with the Chronoscope RS tone arm upgrade, I'm hearing clear as day.
Yeah.
So, for example, you and I discussed, and I won't mention any names, but a pretty well-known vinyl reissue house that does excellent work. But I listened to a couple of their sonically cleaned discs the other day, and the first thing I noticed was that both the discs that I played were really off-center. And I was aware that I wasn't quite as cognizant of the off-centering effect as I with the 0.5 as I was with the full-blown Sparta. And I suspect when I get the Sparta supercapacitor power supply, I'll hear even more of all the good and also those things that aren't so
It
good.
will amplify everything, buddy. Good and
Yes.
bad. Yeah.
And it's really quite startling. It's so lifelike that natural noises in the room. So, for example, if the ice machine drops a piece of ice into the bucket in the freezer, and I hear it, it can also sound like somebody hitting a hi-hat. That kind of clink. And the Kronos is so realistic in what it and how it depicts music that it's really difficult to discern what you're hearing from the speakers in the system from other ambient sounds in the room that might sound similar. That's about as high a praise as I can give a device and a system, which is it really makes things so lifelike and realistic.
Now, I'm going to post your current system in today's description, and we'll make sure that everybody can see exactly what your system's like. And it's quite impressive. I've been there.
Yeah,
It's really fun.
It's a great
Now,
intimate, what I call intimate space system.
yeah, it is. I mean, your space. Look, I have the luxury of a 46-foot long room, which has advantages and disadvantages. But you've been here, and everybody that's been in this room points to the fact that I have these two aperiodic vents into another room. That this room sounds really good. Look, I measured carefully before I moved into this house, but I will admit there was a bit of luck in here, a crapshoot. This room sounds fabulous.
Yeah,
But
it
your
really
room,
does.
as an intimate space, I've been there, and you've seen my face. I think it's a fabulous sounding system, buddy. Um, Now I want to go back to very briefly. You mentioned the off-center issue, and I suspect that that is a bigger issue for you now that you've heard my ES001 stabilizer and how it
Yeah,
actually works. Um,
I'm not looking forward to the day that I've got to part with the cash to get that into my system, but I back in the day, you may remember this turntable. There was a turntable back in the day specifically designed to address this problem. That was the
yep.
Nakamichi Dragon turntable. It had a special system. It was early LED based. I was it the top platter or
Well, it
did it
works on the
move?
same principle
Yes,
as the
same
musical
principle.
as the
Yes,
DS audio thing, but it was done. It was quite expensive. It was
yes,
prone to failure because it was so far ahead
mechanically,
of its time. I mean,
yes,
they were really pushing the envelope in the technologies, and it did work. I mean, I
it did
sold
absolutely.
them.
Oh, well, what's funny is that today, for a not inexpensive price, I think the stabilizer from DS Audio is about 6,000 retail. Uh, but the fact that you can now get the same effect on any turntable that can support the weight, without having to replace the entire turntable is really remarkable. Here's what I find fascinating about DS Audio's approach, and I find fascinating about Louis' approach. Why didn't somebody think of this sooner? Is the question. There's such self-evidently straightforward propositions
Yeah.
in terms of their mechanics or physics, but also so elegantly engineered. And
Yeah.
maybe that's the issue, which is it's one thing to conceptualize their approaches. It's another thing to be willing to spend the money and the time
To make it
to
happen.
execute them properly. And I think that's the key here.
Well, and I'm not disparaging anyone when I say that I was shocked that it took until 2012 or so, 13, for someone to come up with contra-rotation in a way that actually worked. But
Yes.
what Louis did, and I said in that initial review that I did for the Absolute Sound that I felt contra-rotation was the most significant advance in turntable technology in several decades, and I still believe that. The difference it makes, look, there are a lot of great turntables out there. We know that.
We've heard them,
Yeah.
some of them.
But what the Kronos does routinely, the full contra-rotating systems, and Discovery was like, it was like we were listening to microphone feeds, not even master tape. We were listening through the systems back to anyway. I don't want to get too far off topic here, but you are happy with your Sparta.
Extraordinarily happy, and I think it's safe to say that as turntables go, unless I win the power lotto, that this is it for me. And that any system that I'm likely to use over the next decade or so will be well grounded with this turntable. Now, one thing you and I have discussed, and it was pretty apparent when you were here back in February when we spun a few LPs. As much as I love my current phono stage, it was apparent that it was outclassed a bit by the front end.
Yeah.
And you and I have talked about some potential contenders from MoFi, from Mola Mola, a couple of other sources that we think will be good upgrades. But and so that's the downside to upgrading something so radically in your system.
Yeah.
Invariably, you have to recognize that you are going to have to make other upgrades over time.
Yeah.
To fully exploit the upgraded source component that you just purchased.
Well, you've just hit upon the underlying problem with this sport hobby disease that we have. The one that I have suffered the most with is once I hear something that is so, I mean, dude, I didn't want to buy the Sparta when it came. I mean, I had a very good turntable that I had loved for years, but when I heard it, it was like,
magnificent device.
I've
Yeah,
got to have this.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
then when Discovery came out and because they only made 250 of the Pro LEs, and I couldn't buy one when they came out. They were too expensive for me. But in the rush for people to replace their Pros with Discoveries, I was able to pick up a pre-owned one for a reasonable price, which is what allowed me to move into this. And
Absolutely.
I agree with you that until I have the money to buy like a perpetual, I'm happier than
It's a
there's nothing out
magnificent
there I'd rather have.
Absolutely. Well, I was at Bill Parrish's. Maybe it was in September or October of last year, later in the year in the fall, and Lauren Sticky was
We were
there,
there for the
and the
Moya
team
event.
introducing the Moya, and Bill said, "Hey, let's listen to some vinyl." And I can't remember quite honestly whether we were listening to Discovery or Perpetual. They both hit with incredible impact and believability. But a group of jaded audiophiles and reviewers were sitting there, and folks just turned and shook their head in disbelief. And all of them said essentially the same thing. We've heard great turntables over the years. We never heard any tone arm, cartridge, turntable setup that quite matches the resolving power of Discovery. Yes.
I agree.
This doesn't mean that there aren't great turntables out there
No.
with different approaches. It's just that Louis' approach and the way it delivers the final result is just simply something special that you should hear if you have the opportunity, even if you can't afford it.
It's a singular approach, and it
It
is
really is.
it is a sui generis approach overall. And what Discovery does, unbelievable. So,
Absolutely.
well, listen,
Absolutely.
brother, I can't thank you enough for your time.
Hey,
Um,
my pleasure. I'll send you the bill this week.
eh. So, do I get to send you a bill for the installation? No, I'm just kidding.
I think you were
Dude, we
paid.
had so much fun. Hey,
I
you
bought
took
you
me
dinner at
out to a couple
Wendy's.
of meals. We had a good time. We had a good time while we
We
were
had Wendy's chili and fries.
there.
Life
We
was good,
did.
man.
That's right. We did. We did. That was great. All right, brother. Listen, you be safe. Keep enjoying that turntable, and
Hey,
we'll talk
thanks, brother.
again soon, okay?
Hey, man. Thank you, brother. Godspeed.
Be safe, buddy. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
We hope that today's presentation will help to shed further understanding and insight into the remarkable sonic performance advantages inherently leveraged by the game-changing, patented contra-rotational platter system available only from Louis Desjardins' Kronos turntable lineup. While I can readily admit that no one, myself included, has heard everything, especially given the nearly infinite number of combinations that are possible. I can just as confidently assure you that over my 5+ decades in and around this industry, and more than 35 years of chronicling my journey, I've surely heard a much wider, deeper cross-section of table, arm, cartridge, and phono stage combinations than all but a handful of other audio professionals, reviewers, and audio journalists. As such, informed, discriminating listeners like Maurice and myself have chosen to take advantage of the singular and otherwise unobtainable advantages provided by the Kronos machines. Their ability to provide for a disarming level of unmasking of fine detail, resulting in a number of quite audible refinements, including a more natural, neutral, and vibrant tonal and spatial presentation, to be the most effective means of extracting the fullest, most authentic level of information possible from our cherished LP collections. If you've heard a Kronos turntable, you've surely experienced what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I hope that you will go out of your way to experience the addictive and exceptional Kronos sound at your next opportunity. As always, thank you for taking the time to drop by today. Further information on supporting the channel may be found in today's description section or at my companion website, theaudioanalyst.com. Please stay safe and keep the music playing. Till next time, cheers.